King Fernando, sitting on a wheelchair, is accompanied by his wife, Esmeralda, and his son Alfonso, together with guards and their maids, while they go to the balcony of their mansion, with a view of a garden where a pregnant woman is about to be executed. His wife expresses concern for his well-being, while she gets up from the wheelchair to greet the massive crowd below. Mendoza, his bodyguard, holding a red cane, assures the king that he will feel better once the execution is carried out. Alfonso observes the witch, who moves slightly, scaring him. He hides quickly behind his mother, while the king orders them to return to their rooms. While the prosecutor lights the flames around the witch, the crowd is inculcating her for the last epidemic. In the middle of the burning flames, the witch Anna, who has not shouted a single scream, raises his head and the air is filled with babies' cries. Surrounded by a green shield, the baby fights inside the flames. Suddenly, the king and his guards, surprised, turn to witness a knight dressed in armor wielding two swords and a wolf's helmet. With a grunt, he swings forward, his green cape waving behind him while he jumps over the guards who try to stop his way. Despite the efforts of Mendoza to intervene, the horse quickly knocks him down, jumps off the balcony and heads to the witch. Jumping between the flames, he picks up the baby, covering it with a cloth. His horse, dressed in knight armor, approaches and mounts it with the baby in his arms. Running among the crowd, he jumps off the roofs, disappearing from sight. Mendoza recognizes him as a demon knight allegedly imprisoned. He orders his guards to chase him and reflects that he will not escape with a child. Looking at the witch wrapped in flames, the guard curses her, swearing to eradicate all and each of them. Although the king's army deployed immediately, both the demon and the child disappeared without a trace. Later, under the counsel of Mendoza, King Fernando implements witch hunts all over the country. More than 100 witches are tortured and executed in a single year in the name of the witch hunt. In the name of the witch hunt, Valiant sends armies to nearby cities, consolidating and increasing even more its power in another place. Sitting on the edge of the bed, a woman with long red hair gives a sip to her glass while her partner Germain tells the events of the kingdom Leiden, which fell under the dominion of Valiant a year ago. With that, he concludes the story of 17 years ago, leaving her disappointed by the lack of resolution regarding the missing child. Drinking a drink from his bottle, German admits that there is still no data. When she tries to get up, he brings her back to bed, planting kisses on her neck. He asks her to see the story from the perspective of Anna, but she underestimates him, condemning witches as nothing more than repugnant creatures that make deals with demons. However, German tells her that witches are people whose task is to seal the demons. She laughs at the notion, despising her for saying that they are not priests. However, he contradicts, explaining that witches are better with priests, because priests are weak and lack the strength necessary to seal the demons. The lady asks another question, stating that she did not improve the king's health after executing the witch, and German replies that it may be just a coincidence, or maybe he was prepared in that way by a demon, or someone who is allied with the demons. She takes another sip of alcohol, confessing that she is a woman for the streets, and has slept with many men, but has never found a single demon out of bed. He grabs her and tells her that he will show her to one, and her eyes shine for a second, but he separates it by saying that first he has to pay for it. Just at that moment there is a knock on the door and someone informs German that his son has come to pick him up. German, acting like a pathetic and penniless father, asks his son to lend him some money through the window. The son responds by picking up a stone and throwing it before moving away. Watching the son, the girl says that he seems to be the same age as the son lost from the witch. At the same time, in the middle of the night, a man wakes up and goes down the hall to the girl's room. A peculiar aura emanates. As he approaches with lustful intentions, a purple creature attacks from above. Completely losing it, while the girl licks her lips, an evil smile is spread over her face. In the castle, Mendoza holds a pen, writing notes on a piece of paper and all those things, while Octavia, holding a candle, is close. He mentions a report detailing a father and son participating in peculiar armies near the outskirts of Leiden. Octavia speculates if the reports are true. Mendoza assures that the disappearance of many customers of his workplace is mentioned, but she underestimates him, blaming him for marital problems. The woman seduces German, but when he turns to kiss her, she suffers a sudden transformation, emanating a purple energy from her eyes and mouth, while a horror materializes behind him. He quickly recovers his twin swords and sinks them into the horror, causing the woman to disappear with a scream. He holds the horror to the wall with his sword, and the horror recognizes him as the knight who once escaped with the child, Herman Lois, also known as the Night Fox of Mackay. While the guards surround the area throwing arrows of fire on the boy's house, a man white hair breaks, wielding a sword, and crossing glances with the boy in the middle of the flames. They ask if the boy is the son of Anna, to which the boy presents himself as Leon Lewis, heir to the line of blood that seals the horrors. With a quick movement, he raises his sword, invoking a circle on it, which manifests as a golden armor adorning its shape. As a golden knight Garrow, he hits swords with the man outside the house in flames. Garrow uses his cape to grab the man and throw him away when he turns into a horror. Taking advantage of the house in flames, the horror throws it at Garrow, who maneuvers through its windows, emerging on the other side to pierce the eye of horror, causing it to collapse. The guards flee the castle while the horror crashes before them, but he gets up again, charging against Garrow quickly. Garrow cuts his legs, causing the horror to burst into pieces. Later, Leon faces his father German for leaving him alone at home, knowing that he would be attacked, but German justifies it as the final part of his training. With that, together they head to Valiant, the land where they killed Anna. Meanwhile in the castle, the kingdom celebrates the 20th birthday of Prince Alfonso. While the king and queen bless him, he swears to protect his people. His mother gives him a protective necklace that he has worn since childhood. Octavia's eyes grow when she recognizes the necklace and rushes to the room where Mendoza prepares his ultimate weapon. In another place, in a room, a man is placed on a woman tied to a chair, claiming to be a priest and assuring her that he knows that she is not a witch. Ignoring her pleas, stabs her, making her scream in agony while her blood drips in the gutter, opening the door of Makai, unleashing a curse on humanity, infecting them with desires, sins and diseases. Emerges between him and the chain device and consumes the dark energy emanating from it. The man, now a horror, turns around and also consumes the girl. These creatures, the horrors, have existed since ancient times, and to save humanity from these horrors they are hunted by men dressed in armor called Matsai Knights. The Fox Knight, also known as German, walks through a corridor where he finds a reclined woman in a large sofa to which he refers as the girl from the surveillance center. He comments on her youthful appearance, but rejects his offer to speak in her real form. She mentions that it is the first time that the number of gentlemen has been so low since they assigned her to this place. He regrets the tragedy of the brave witch hunt, but pointing his sword at her, German demands that he stop faking. He accuses her of giving orders, but she denies it and tells him that it was Mendoza, where he was able to close the communications of the surveillance center and send false orders. And he was able to do it because he is a Massey priest, who was once strongly supported by the council. At the same time, Octavia informs Mendoza about the necklace that the queen gave Alfonso. His disbelief becomes a horror when he realizes the implication of the line of blood of the Makai Knights. Octavia tries to console him, but he leaves. His face is marked with dark symbols, murmuring about the need to eradicate his bloodline. German asks what they did to Mendoza, who has such a deep hatred for the Makai Knights, and also inquires if he can control the horrors. The woman shrugs her shoulders indifferently, urging German to eliminate any perceived threat, even if that means stabbing Mendoza. Leon, sleeping on the riverbank, dreams of his mother while fire marks appear in his hand. German appears through a portal, throws him into the river, and the marks disappear. During his trip, German, making fun of Leon, tells him that crying and making a depressed face will not get him any girl. But Leon, like a crack, says he doesn't need them and punches him in the face. Elsewhere, Prince Alfonso impresses his master during a duel with a knight showing his skills, but suddenly a servant accidentally damages a stone with the king's emblem and faces punishment until the prince intervenes. Saving him, Queen Esmeralda, watching from the window, praises him and is glad to have a son as kind as him. Just at that moment, he notices the king sweating and orders Octavia to bring the king's medicine. While he is about to give it to him, Mendoza arrives with guards accusing the queen of poisoning the medicine to help Alfonso claim the throne. The queen denies it, but Mendoza questions if Alfonso is really the king's son, since he says that the queen could have easily deceived him and all the paranoia. Angry, the queen rejects the accusation, but Mendoza smiles and orders his guards to arrest her. At the same time, German shows Leon the money he got by selling the horses, explaining that riding them would attract too much attention. A woman hugs German affectionately, kissing him. German reveals to Leon that he has inherited the Garrick armor from his mother, and only he can summon and use the armor. But now the problem is that Leon will not inherit his armor, so he needs someone else to inherit his. Therefore, he is trying to be with other girls so that he can get another child that inherits his armor. When he hears this, Leon curses him for being unfaithful to his mother, while German flees with his lady. Leon walks down the streets wondering how his mother fell in love with German and sees the place where the witches are burned. A peculiar figure with a disfigured face informs him that the inhabitants of the town suspect that the witches are behind the recent disappearances of young girls. She also mentions that recently they managed to capture a foreign woman, suspicious of being a witch before disappearing. Meanwhile, in a close-up, the horror that pretending to be a priest faces a woman named Emma, accused of witchcraft, offering her the opportunity of a less painful death if she confesses, but she rejects it mockingly. Acting like a good man, the priest grants her a night to think about it, despite the enthusiasm of her subordinate for torturing her. After the priest leaves, they beat her, but she bites one of them, reminding them of the priest's decision to forgive her for this night. In the tower, Leon wonders if the disappearance of the girls could be the work of a horror. German agrees and also speculates that Emma could be a MacGyver priestess and suggests that they rescue her. Confused about why they captured her if she is a priestess, Leon is reminded by German that if they are dealing with humans, they are not allowed to hurt them in the middle of the night. The priest enters the room and reveals his desire to torture Emma, inserting his tiny needles in every centimeter of her body to find the place where the witches do not feel pain. Emma underestimates him like a rumor and reveals a pink bell hidden on her left leg, making the priest's eyes turn pink momentarily, before returning to normal. Realizing that it is a horror, Emma questions him about someone named Luciano, but he arrives at any knowledge, recognizing her as a priestess of Samakai. The priest turns into a horror. Suddenly the door opens suddenly and German erupts, ordering Leon to take care of the horror. Leon jumps and hits him outside the room, breaking the wall. German approaches to help Emma, but she acts like an empowered girl who does not need to be rescued, using a thread to release blue magic on the ground, temporarily blinding him while chasing the horror. Emma attacks the horror that is in combat with Leon, repressing him for interfering and getting in the way, which bothers him. With Emma and Leon on each side, the horror turns into a box and launches an attack against them. Leon jumps to a nearby bridge, but the horror cuts his arms in the form of a scythe. When the bridge collapses, Leon lands on the stake, unleashing memories of his mother's bed. Fire marks appear and he turns into the Golden Knight Garo, writhing in pain. What surprises Emma is to know that Leon is the bearer of the armor of the Golden Knight. The horror fixes him to the wall with his arms in the form of a chain, but manages to send fire through them, burning the chains and sending Emma flying in the process. Seeing that the lion is out of control, Herman transforms into the night fox and intervenes, knocking down Garo to calm him down. Knowing that he is too weak against them, the horror tries to flee to heaven, but Emma uses her threads to jump after him, cutting him to pieces. While Garo struggles with pain, Emma does the final blow. Fox stabs Garo's armor, making him return to his human form and fall unconscious. Emma expresses her disdain for the Mackay Knights, qualifying them as the worst before moving away. At the same time, they inform Alfonso about the situation of his mother, who rides his horse and runs after the carriage that his mother is carrying. His mother tells him to run away while he tells him about the betrayal of Mendoza. The queen encourages him to return and claim the kingdom one day, as the legendary Knight of Light. With the guards in pursuit, Alfonso deals quickly with them before escaping. Meanwhile, Mendoza, burning the image of the Fox Knight, swears to eradicate them all. Leon and German sit in a bar where German reveals a message from the surveillance center. Turning on a red envelope in green flames, the words materialize in the air, forming a message about the Ring Madu, which is a horror that has no friendship towards people sealed inside, and grants power and light to guide the way to his destiny to whoever wants me to make a contract with him. The message tells them that Saruva is almost complete and they need to inherit it before the inventor dies. German tells Leon that they should go claim Saruva, and he knows that it is located somewhere between a place called Arhala and some rocks. Leon is lazy about this, but German reminds him that he needs the Ring Madu to complete his transformation into a Golden Knight and to keep him under control. Listening to his conversation, Emma, who stays in the same inn, surprises him by joining her table. She jokes with Leon, referring to him as a child, but German invites her to join them for a drink. While they are sitting, Emma asks about Leon's progress in controlling his flames, and German mentions his request from the priest Gale to repair the Ring Madu, surprising her, since he had a connection with the highest-ranked priest in the district. Emma comments how she will turn him into a Golden Knight in full right, inciting Leon to point out his father and ask why he is sharing this information with a suspicious woman like her. He touches the mark in Leon's hand, making him shudder to get up and go to bed. Emma, softening his gaze, grabs his coat and tells him to wait, not to have offended him. When he touches the mark, Leon leaves without answering, and Emma, thanking German for the drink, leaves the bed too, killing German's hopes of being able to do something. The next day, German and Leon leave to claim Suruba, heading to an underground cave where the priest Gale and his apprentice Marsillo are working. Gale, who works diligently to repair Suruba, knows that he is an old man and that he must last until Roberto arrives. Therefore, he decides to rest, ordering Marsillo to clean the rest. Marsillo hears an alarm that sounds and runs out, while German and Leon rush through the forest to the secret cave. They are attacked with conjured needles when Marsillo hits a magic drum. German calls the priest Gale, calling himself Roberto, and Marsillo stops the attack immediately. The priest Gale scolds Marsillo for not distinguishing between a horror and a knight. And with this, Marsillo runs to the cave. Gale asks German if his name is German or Roberto. German replies that he is fine with anyone, and jokes about the fact that both children have problems with their mothers, growing up alone as a father figure. In a flashback, Gale sits in the cave, expressing his concern for the brave witch's house that leads the horrors to spread over the earth. Herman shows him a broken Madu ring, a relic inherited by Anna, the mother of Leon, along with his golden armor of a knight. Herman asks Gale to repair it before Leon, who is only a newborn at that time, takes the sword when he grows up. Gale accepts it as his last job and claims that it will take a long time to finish it. Back to the present, Gale assures Leon that Suruva will guide his flames on the right path. He also comments that the eyes of Leon resemble those of the previous Claw, his grandfather, who was the most powerful knight on Earth. With determination, Gale rises, swearing to use all his power to complete the final repairs of the ring Madu. Marsillo sits in a corner, wondering why Leon has come after so long to claim what he believes he belongs to him by right, the ring Madu. Meanwhile, he faces Suruva with Markilo standing behind them. Starting a song, he throws white rice to Suruva to complete the process, eventually throwing all the cup to him, which eventually leads to Suruva to extend himself through crystalline formations. Markilo, full of emotion, observe. But then an inner voice tempts him and questions if it is okay to allow Leon and the others to take Suruva. At that moment he becomes a Makai knight behind Gale, stabbing him with a sword, declaring that he will not allow anyone to take his Suruva, while Marsillo, now wielding a sword Judea, with darkness now, emerges from somewhere behind him. With that, Marsillo flees into the forest, but ends up meeting Emma. Questioning her about his identity, Marsillo discovers that he is a priestess Makai. When he sees the radar in his hands, he unravels his sword, but Emma ties him quickly with his rope. Suddenly a strong explosion attracts Leon and German towards them. When he gets there, Marsillo informs him that the ring Madu was stolen by a priestess Makai, who handles ropes and who also killed the priest Gale. Recognizing him as Emma's ability, Leon rushes to look for her. Emma is already hurt in the forest with her hand injured. Leon appears, calling her, but she hides, thinking that she has gone to her pirates. But Leon returns suddenly and attacks her, but she dodges it easily. He demands the ring Madu, but she informs him that Marsillo has become a Morer and that he still has Suruva. Meanwhile, German kneels on Gale, evaluating the situation. Marsillo expresses his intention to leave and find the ring Madu, but German notices that the wound does not match that of a rope bearer. While Leon rushes to them, he meets German running away from Marsillo's power. Markilo tries to use the power of the Madu ring, but fails, since German explains that only the Golden Knights can handle it effectively. Unable to accept this, Markilo turns into a horror. Seeing this, Leon trusts his father and loses control again, and turns into Garu. He throws himself at Markilo, who counterattacks with his power, causing his swords to collide in the middle of purple flames and fire marks. Emma attacks from the trees and both containers are thrown back. The crystal in Marsillo's stomach cracks, revealing the Amadou ring, and Garo takes the opportunity to grab it. At the moment he touches the ring, Leon is in a dark space, with Suruba's face floating in the air, asking him if he is ready to make a contract. Leon agrees, and a tattoo of a red ring appears on his finger. Suruba clarifies that he is Leon's partner, not his servant. And in exchange for power, Leon must offer his life to every new moon. Garod removes his hand from Marcy's stomach. Suruba's symbol is engraved on his hand now. He gives the final blow to Marsilik, who disappears. Later, Emma casts a spell to protect Gale's memories of being disturbed. Leon asks Silo if to point to Suruba, but she laughs, saying that she will wait until he is fully formed. At the same time, the guards chase Alfonso, accusing him of trying to murder the king. Alfonso defends himself, stabbing a guard who later turns into a horror, which surprises him completely. Enraged by these creatures threatening his country, Alfonso defends himself, but his sword breaks and the horrors dominate him easily, until a red-armored macaque knight arrives, attacking and killing all the horrors that surround Alfonso. He asks the knight if he is the legendary hero of Valiant, the Knight of Light. The knight turns into a human form and moves away without answering. He asks Alfonso if he is coming, and Alfonso hurries to follow him. Meanwhile, Leon and German pass through the forest. Leon asks where they are going. German reveals that he heard strange rumors about a town where they spent the night. Understanding his duty as a Mackay knight to eradicate horrors, Leon agrees to investigate. Upon entering the town, he notices the peculiar behavior of its inhabitants. With heads of deer scattered openly in the streets, German approaches a young woman who brings water from a well, but she immediately turns into an unpleasant old woman. Then they are confronted by the head of the town, a bald man with a white mustache, accompanied by 2 bodyguards. German asks him about the disappearances in the town, including that of a monk and a church official, but the boss refuses to have knowledge of such events. He urges them to leave, stating that the villagers fear outsiders like them because they will bring them misfortune. Later, Leon tries to persuade German to leave the town, but German advises Leon not to rush to seek revenge for his mother, because he knows he wants to get to the town where they killed his mother as soon as possible. In addition, he says that revenge is not healthy because it will only destroy him. At that moment, 3 children intimidate a child named Aloys, demanding that he leave his territory. When they try to take a toy from him, they end up hurting themselves. Just when one of them is about to hit him, German intervenes. The children explain that they want them to leave town because he is cursed by Aloys' mother, whom they believe is a witch, before fleeing. Aloys praises his toy for biting the abuser, and German offers to escort him home. Upon entering Aloys' house, a beautiful woman who carries a bucket of laundry warmly greets him. She asks if Aloys thanked them properly for saving him. Gruel runs quickly to his room. While they settle down, Aloys' mother expresses gratitude and shares her concerns about Aloys' behavior since the death of her father. She mentions her attachment to a peculiar doll she found in the forest. She asks if they are visiting the town on a pilgrimage, but German mentions the rumors about the cursed town using a bell to detect if it is a horror. Aloys' mother, thinking they are witch hunters, tells them that she will not curse them. German makes a pathetic attempt to flirt, telling her that he would not care about any curse she puts on him. But Aloys' mother laughs at that as a joke. Identifying him as the clown he is, she laughs at his nonsense and offers them a place to stay, which German accepts with pleasure. At the same time, Aloys escapes secretly from his house and takes the 3 thugs to follow him to the forest. After affirming that a gang of thieves hid their treasures there, however, he takes them to a ghost swamp. Suddenly, Aloys' attitude becomes robotic and rigid, and she turns around, scaring the other children while the world around her darkens. German asks why the villagers suspect that Aloys' mother may be a witch. She explains that she moved to the village with her husband, and after the death of her husband, strange things happened. When Leon asks her about the disappearances, she reveals that people disappear without leaving a trace. German asks her if her husband also disappeared, but she tells them that he was attacked by thieves on the way to the capital. Then he asks why everyone thinks that she is a witch and that all the misfortune is caused by her. She simply answers that it cannot be avoided because the villagers needed someone to blame, and she was the perfect target. When hearing this, Leon wonders why the boss lied, and German thinks it must be because there is something that he does not want outsiders to know. Suddenly, the parents of the missing children burst out, all armed and demanding answers. German tries to calm the situation, but the boss accuses them of being accomplices of the supposed witch. A woman claims to have seen Aloys with the missing children, but German defends him, saying that he has been inside all the time. It turns out that it was a horror disguised as Aloys who took the children to the forest. While the villagers take Aloys' mother to question her, Aloys flees when he tries to capture him too. The chief, surrounded by villagers, interrogates Aloys' mother, who is tied to a pillar with a bag on her head. Threatening her with an axe, he demands to know if he revealed information about the ceremony to German and Leon. Suddenly, the chaos explodes when a villager breaks in, announcing that the chief's house is on fire. They blame the curse. The villagers gather outside their house. German, standing on top of a nearby house, rings a bell to identify any horror, and then runs to cut the ropes of Aloys' mother. The villagers enter the room, demanding to know the intentions of German with respect to the witch. The boss intervenes, asking for the location of Leon, to which German simply replies that he does not know. With that, The boss announces that all suspicions against Aloy's mother have been clarified, allowing them to leave. As they walk away, the boss tells the villagers that the ceremony will take place that night. Leon approaches a house and hears a conversation inside, but it makes an accidental noise, and the conversation abruptly stops. Upon entering, he discovers the deserted house, except for 3 broken dolls on a table. Moving forward, he enters a room full of dolls, which scares him completely. He turns around and finds Alois standing behind him. Alois asks for her mother, and Leon assures her that her father will take measures to rescue her. Watching his doll, Alois agrees to let Leon accompany her home. While he returns, Alois explains to Leon that the villagers avoid that house near the swamp, believing that it is cursed due to a lumberjack nicknamed the Devil of the Town. Before his mother, Leon asks him what he was doing in that place, but Alois, ignoring his question, asks him about his purpose in the town. Leon trusts that he is there to eradicate the entities that haunt the town. Alois assumes that he refers to the thieves responsible for the death of his father. But Leon clarifies that apprehending criminals is not his mission. As they approach the house, German informs Leon that there are no horrors among the villagers. He tells them that the only remaining possibility is Alois. He offers himself as a volunteer to take care of it, since he thinks that Leon will not be able to eliminate a child. But Leon tells him not to treat him like a child. They test Alois by ringing the bell, but they discover that he is also human. German considers that a foreigner could be involved. When Leon asks Alois' mother about the lumberjack, she explains that in the little hut near the swamp, a lumberjack used to live, but he was murdered by the villagers who claimed to perform a ceremony to stop the misfortune of the people. Leon suddenly realizes something and runs to Alois' room, but finds it empty. He tells German that the doll is the horror and runs out. The villagers surround their house, each holding a torch lit, ready to perform the ceremony. Leon chases Aloy, who is guided by the horror, stating that German and Leon are bad people and want to separate them. Leon catches up with them and demands to see the doll, which then turns into a horror. Leon turns into Garo and prepares to hit the horror, but suddenly takes the face of Alois, therefore the bearer vacillates, and the horror takes the opportunity to flee despite Garo's attempt to chase him. Alois intervenes, protecting the horror. Then Alois finally reveals the truth, that it was the villagers who killed his father, expressing his desire for revenge. At the same time, the villagers try to tear down his house. Alois' mother, crying on the floor, admits that her husband was involved in the ceremony to eliminate the lumberjack. But after a while he could not stand it anymore and tried to go to the church to denounce him, but the villagers eliminated him in the forest, and Alois was able to witness this whole event that completely broke him. The villagers tear down the walls of the house, but suddenly the horror appears and attacks and devours everyone. German, grabbing Alois' mother, escapes through the window. The horror observes that the boss is running away, but Garo intervenes using his cape to restrain the horror. When he is about to stab him again, the horror transforms his face again, but this time Garo eliminates him. Alois now hits Leon, because the horror was the only one who helped him to take revenge. His mother hugs him, apologizing for not being able to do anything. The next day, Aloysius and his mother place a blue flower in a grave, while they leave the village, watching the villagers take the Tide boss to a room. Leon feels angry, but German reminds him that it is not his role to judge humans. Elsewhere, while Alfonso fights against horrors with a knight Makai, he seeks to understand who these creatures are and their motives. The knight explains that they are horrors, creatures of the demonic world where they live in the dark and consume humans. He reveals that Mendoza uses a forbidden tool of Madhu to command the horrors with the aim of taking over Valiant. Upon hearing this, Alfonso expresses his desire to learn the knight's skills to help defeat the horrors and regain his kingdom, because at this time he is too weak. The gentleman swings his sword, killing the horror behind him. Then he introduces himself as Raphael, a friend of the late Golden Knight. The next day, German has a bad dream and is woken up by Leon's kicks. When the sun rises, his ring suddenly shines, transporting him to a kingdom with Sabura. There, Sabura informs him that it is a new moon, the moment in which he must receive Leon's life according to his contract. While Saruba begins to extract Leon's vital force, it collapses while German runs towards him. German sits next to Leon, who is already unconscious in bed with his ring shining and pulsing. He remembers that there is a night in the month when the Golden Knight does not appear when he offers his life to Sarua. With a sigh, he would like to have asked Donna for more details. Alfonso follows Raphael to a place in ruins where he hangs a golden portrait of a Matsai knight. Raphael tells Alfonso about the forgotten knowledge of the horrors in the knights and Matsai priests who once fought them. He explains how this knowledge has vanished from memory, with the Mackay Knights now being unfairly labeled as witches and persecuted. In addition, he informs him that hundreds of his comrades have died in vain in his country and did not fight back because they are not allowed to harm humans. Upon hearing all this, Alfonso finally realizes the truth about the witch house and that Mendoza was behind it all. Raphael confirms that Mendoza hates the knights who fight against the horrors and their descendants, without knowing the reason. He also reveals that the blood of the legendary Golden Knight Garo, also known as the Knight of Light, flows in Alfonso's veins, which completely surprises Alfonso. Raphael reveals to Alfonso the tragic story of Anna, who carried the blood of the Golden Knight, but was executed for cursing the King of Valiant. In his last moments, she transmitted her bloodline, giving birth to a son. Although Alfonso already knew parts of this story, Raphael adds that Anna had a younger sister and her name is Esmeralda, who somehow by fate became the Queen of Valiant and was also the mother of Alfonso. Anna's duty was to transmit the golden armor through her bloodline, while Esmeralda, adopted by aristocrats, remained alien to her inheritance. Only her father and Raphael knew the truth. Alfonso remembers his mother's necklace, used since his birth, and realizes that Mendoza must have noticed it, which led to his betrayal, because that necklace is the key to activating the armor of the Knight Mackay. Alfonso asks Raphael about his strength, asking him if he really has the power of the Knight Mackay to fight against the horrors, which leads Raphael to attack him. Alfonso manages to deflect his attacks at first, but retreats and falls, but gets up immediately. Raphael explains that his lineage is not enough, and in his current state, he cannot even put on the armor. Despite this, Alfonso says that even if he does not have the armor, he will do what is necessary to protect his country. Upon hearing this, Raphael offers him his sword, but Alfonso fights under his weight. Although he is in this setback, Alfonso follows Raphael while he is determined to find a way to fulfill his destiny. Octavia, with a king as benefactor, caresses the king's head looking at him in a disgusting way. Mendoza enters the room and asks about the king's health, telling him to keep him alive. He questions about the queen and Octavia, and tells her that Esmeralda does not know about her lineage. Mendoza suggests that they can eliminate the queen at any time, so it could be a valuable asset in his pursuit of the fugitive prince, and he orders Octavia to keep her prisoner. Meanwhile, Raphael used a forged document to enter a land. While walking, he reveals to Alfonso that despite being skilled in battle, his grandfather the Golden Knight was naive in worldly matters. Then it was Raphael who organized the adoption of his daughter, Alfonso's mother. Although he did all this, he was surprised to find out that she became the queen. While heading to see Count Romero de Baldona, Raphael advises Alfonso to pay close attention. Upon arrival, Alfonso tries to question the civilians, but they flee immediately upon seeing him. When they arrive at the place, Raphael tells him about Count Romero, who was previously known as a man of integrity, but now he is no longer human. Upon entering the domain of the Count, a knight follows him closely, floating in the air. The knight attacks Alfonso, but Raphael intervenes, breaking his sword. He rings a bell and the eyes of the gentleman turn red while he transforms into a horror. Raphael urges Alfonso to stay behind while he faces the horror in combat. Just at that moment, one of his arms hits Alfonso and crashes into another room where a hairy man with red eyes plays an instrument. A gigantic green horror with multiple hands appears from a corner and approaches a woman holding a baby. Alfonso runs and stabs him, but the horror barely notices it. Alfonso grabs the woman and takes her out of the corner, protecting them from the horror, while he grabs another weapon. He hits the horror several times, calling it a monster, but it did not cause any damage, and the horror sends Alfonso flying with a movement of his hand, but he gets up quickly and grabs a wooden stick to attack him again. However, suddenly, Raphael appears, transforming into the knight of the fortress, Gaia, breaking his sword on the ground. He conjures green flames and stabs the horror with them, making it disappear. Alfonso approaches the trembling woman and suddenly apologizes for his uselessness. Outside, he asks Raphael to teach him how to fight against horror, and is willing to overcome any obstacle to obtain that strength so that he can protect his country. Upon hearing his conviction, Raphael finally agrees to teach him all his skills. In another place, Leon is standing in a strange light, not sure of his surroundings, when suddenly a golden knight appears behind him, who he recognizes as his grandfather. The knight explains that every new moon, a day of Leon's life is consumed by Suruba, and they are in a kingdom where time stops, separated from a usual flow of time. He also tells Leon not to fear his flames, and to look for guidance in his sword whenever he has doubts about who he must protect. When he hears all this, Leon finally wakes up and finds himself resting in the lap of a woman. His father informs him that these kind people offered him a trip to Santa Bar. While Leon gets up, he notices several other passengers in the vehicle. He begins to tell Germain about his grandfather, but he hesitates, leaving it curious. While the locksmiths were diligently working to shape a new sheet, soldiers from the Forbidden Castles arrive at his workshop, carrying a sword covered with a red cloth. Geordie, the boss, assumes that his son Sergi has returned, but the soldiers unveil his sword, revealing a weapon with a red mark on his handle. German and Leon go to Valiant, with Leon eager to go directly to the castle. However, German, always charming, suggests that first take a look at the local women. Meanwhile, a worker in the blacksmith's office says goodbye to his colleagues and enters the workshop to find Geordie staring at the sword brought by the soldiers. When this worker closes the door, Geordie hears the sword speak with the voice of his son calling him. Approaching, he is enveloped by a dark aura emanating from the sword, which enters his body through his eyes and mouth. German approaches Julio and asks about the castle. Then Geordie leaves the workshop and assumes that German's interest lies in becoming a knight. Misinterpreting his intentions while he is speaking to him, Julio, worried, asks him if he feels better. Geordie tells him that he feels much better now, and moves away. Leon explores the bustling market, noticing the unusual presence of soldiers. He hears conversations about the possibility of a war because the neighboring kingdoms are gaining power. At that moment, a woman offers Leon a piece of cheese to try, and he watches a young woman working in her store. The woman misinterprets his intentions and asks him if he wants to conspire with her, making him feel uncomfortable, but fortunately Emma appears, pretending to be his partner. She drives him away. After being out of sight, Leon lets go of his hand, telling him that he did not need his help. Emma apologizes immediately and asks him if he was planning to sleep with them. Leon tries to act like a man without interest in them, but Emma recognizes him for the virgin he is, and laughs at him. Angry, Leon asks him what he wants from him, and he asks him if he has information about the horrors, and advises him to grow, because unnecessary anger will not help him at all. At the same time, German joins Geordie to drink something, and the owner of the bar offers him free to see Geordie. German comments on Geordie's popularity, and the owner of the bar mentions that he was also a skilled blacksmith, and Geordie also served in the municipal council in the past. Curious about the cavalry that he mentioned earlier, German asks more. Geordie explains that the head of the army died recently, replaced by a knight named the Black Knight, to create a feared and powerful cavalry in his kingdom. To strengthen the new system, this new leader recruits his new soldiers, by bringing together strong and capable people from all corners of the kingdom, making them fight to the death. And only the few survivors are selected as his soldiers. Geordie proudly mentions that his son is part of this squadron before leaving abruptly due to a back pain. At night, Geordie faces the two soldiers of the squadron, demanding to know the whereabouts of his son. Frustrated by the lack of recognition towards his son, he turns into a horror and attacks, killing them both. The next day, a merchant beats a child for stealing his food. Julio intervenes, inviting the merchant to let him go, but the merchant demands compensation for the theft. Leon arrives at the scene and pays for the stolen articles, allowing the child to escape. Walking together, Julio shares his past with Leon, revealing how he was once in a similar situation to the child's, homeless, until Geordie welcomed him and taught him the trade of the blacksmith. While they turn around the corner, Leon meets his father, knocking on Geordie's door. While they sit down to dinner at Geordie's house, Leon and German start fighting between them. German's comment about Leon being a smart speaker bothers him, and Leon suggests that he should act more like a father. Geordie tries to lighten the mood, but German continues to argue with Leon. German's words about being better without a son like Leon take Geordie to his limit, and tells them both angry to leave their home. Repenting of their kidnapping, he tells them to forgive him and enjoy their food, and he leaves. Although he apologizes, the two decide to leave because they were acting too freely with their kindness. While they walk through the streets, Julio approaches, apologizing for the behavior of Geordie. Julio asks German if he heard about the boss's soldiers, and he answers that he did, telling him about Geordie's son, who is currently destined there. Hearing this, Julio finally reveals the truth that his son is no longer with them, because he died during the knighthood test and only his sword returned. He explains how his boss has acted differently since then. German touches Serge's sword and tells them that the door is open. Elsewhere, in a form of horror, Geordie grabs a soldier who claims that his son is dead, telling him that it is a lie and consumes him. Julio runs to them, telling him to accept the death of Sergio, blocking the attack with his sword. German arrives, transforming, and tells Leon to let him handle the fight. The horror forges his sword, sharpening it with an iron tool on his shoulder. Zorro faces him in combat, avoiding the attacks of horror and throwing chains to tie him. He approaches the horror and makes a powerful blow, then quickly cuts the horror into pieces, making it disappear. After his death, Julio falls down apologizing for his impotence. German comforts him, telling him that the people who remain must focus on determining their next steps instead of regretting past events. Watching the scene from above, Emma comments about the occasional moments of German seriousness. Taking the hammer, Emma wonders if he can become a respected man like his boss. But Leon reminds her how Jordi taught her that he can achieve anything with his hands in the place of work of Jordi. At the same time, Emma asks German about the proof of the soldiers. He explains that they can enter the Black Knight fighting among them. He adds that the winner must enter a specific underground room before being named knight, where a servant of the castle has heard screams, begging that something does not enter his body. He also tells him that winning or losing in the test does not matter, because the result is still the same. In the underground room, 6 soldiers are tied in the center while the horrors surround him, emitting a dark aura that enters their mouths, also transforming them into horrors. Mendoza is satisfied that the creation of his knights advances without problems. The man called the Black Knight, wielding a shield and a sword, reports that one of his mistakes has been murdered by a Mackay knight and a priest, and immediately declares his intention to face both of them for himself. Elsewhere, German adjusts his horse holding a mirror with a pink bow. Leon looks at him and asks why he is wasting time when he is still as ugly as ever, and presses to advance in his infiltration plan in the castle. German tells him to be patient and wait until he has obtained more information of the women he is going to cheat with tonight. Leon asks about the mirror and German explains how women love to receive gifts and how their services change with that. He advises Leon to remember that this is his advice, which ends with Leon kicking him out of the room. Midnight, while Leon sleeps in his room, a woman tells her companion that Leon is the Prince Alfonso disguised, since he had heard about him traveling with a middle-aged man. Realizing the implications of the betrayal of Prince Alfonso, they alert the cavalry, which assaults the place and heads to Leon's room. They enter to find the room empty, and Leon kicks them, suddenly appearing while fleeing from the soldiers who are chasing him. Emma, watching from a roof, wonders what he is doing, while fleeing from a group of knights led by the Black Knight, who tells Leon that even if Prince Alfonso is not born, killing a Matsai knight would be just as satisfactory, and orders them to attack him. While the knights attack him, Leon unravels his sword, disconcerted by the presence of the horrors among the knights. Just at that moment, all the knights turn into horrors. The Black Knight watches from afar, recognizing who Leon is by his posture and the fact that he came with a middle-aged man. He released to attack him, and told Leon to kill him, not to violate the code of the Mackay Knights. While attacking, Leon dodges and also transforms, counterattacking. The Black Knight expresses his disappointment for Leon, referring to him as an unworthy dimwit of being a golden knight. Taro tries to flee, but Leon knocks him down, making him return to his human form. Just when the knight prepares to give him a final blow, Emma intervenes and pulls Leon with his rope, but the Black Knight shoots his rope and Leon falls to the ground. He also attacks Emma, and without any other option, she runs away. While unconscious, Leon dreams that he is tied to a chair. A man pierces him to extract the contaminated blood. The man questions Leon about being a werewolf. Leon denies it, but suddenly he is transformed into one. Leon kills everyone in the house, and then, realizing what he has done, runs outside, unable to accept that he has become a werewolf. Just then, Leon abruptly wakes up in a room, greeted by a girl named Agatha, who insists that he is her brother Pepe. The confusion clouds his mind when an old man enters, revealing that Leon's amnesia may be due to an injury. He offers medication to help in his recovery. Agatha suggests that Leon was probably attacked by a werewolf, and the old man begins to share chilling ancient legends of wolfmen disguised as humans, feeding on them during the full moon. Suddenly, the distant sound of a flute signals the arrival of Arthur King, explaining that he is there to escort them to the church. Agatha runs outside, and urged by the old man, Leon follows Agatha outside the church. A man with peculiar eyes in the axis, surrounded by anxious children with a gentle touch. He selects some who follow him obediently inside. Then a sister appears and asks about Leon's identity to Agatha, who reveals her entrance as Pepe, leaving the stick and such sister. Hiding his surprise with forced kisses, the sister urges Agatha to focus on her tasks so that she can improve her chances of being chosen to go to the farm. However, Agatha tells him that there is no need for him to go now that Pepe has returned. While the sister leaves the church and closes the door, Jade believes in Pepe's return. In the afternoon, Agatha tells Leon how she knew that he would return for her one day, and immediately asks him if he wants to marry her. At that moment, a bell rings and Agatha goes to help her sister with her homework, since she has been given many responsibilities. Later, the sister meets Leon and tries to avoid him, but he asks about his identity. Confused, she asks if he is suffering from amnesia, and is visibly complacent when he ran away from home, arranging for the walking artists to transport him to the exclusive hospice reserved only for the children of the farm. Pretending to be busy with homework, he then excuses himself. Meanwhile, outside the church, Harlequin extends an invitation to Agatha to accompany him, but she rejects him. He does his laundry, but then Harlequin removes his mask, revealing his true identity as Pepe, Agatha's older brother. When Leon returns to the room where he initially woke up, he examines the shelves and discovers his sword, unleashing several memories that return to his mind when he touches it. Just at that moment, the old man enters the room and Leon holds his sword in his neck, and asks him if he is a Matsai priest and what he mixed in his medicine. The old man explains that the medicine he gave him is called the dream passion that erases memories, and he hypnotizes him in a dream. Leon presses him to get an explanation, and the old man confesses that he did this for Agatha. Pepe disguised as Harlequin enters the church with Agatha, causing a surprised reaction from the sister. Pepe demands to open the children's whereabouts, and when he receives the information from the sister, he goes to her address in the room. The old man reveals to Leon that Agatha's mother was his close friend. The priestess, after giving birth to Agatha, she remarried a barber a few years after the death of her husband. The barber already had a son named Pepe, and both Agatha and Pepe quickly became close. However, several years later, a rumor spread that the barber was a werewolf, and both the barber and his wife were murdered. Pepe fled the house after hiding Agatha behind the ceiling and disappeared. He has been missing since then, but he mentions a rumor about a company of walking artists who took him away. The old man took care of Agatha after the tragic deaths of his parents. He admits having deceived Leon because he wanted Agatha's dream of her brother returning to her to be a reality. While the church bell rings, pointing to the passage of time, the old man informs Leon that Agatha arrives late. Upon hearing this, Leon runs to the church and discovers the sister sitting on the floor. Facing her, he accuses her of using street artists to traffic children with slave traffickers because finally discovered it. She tries to deny the accusations, but Leon already knows that the town of La Graja was decimated by an epidemic, and she used it as an excuse to sell children. Angry, he demands to know where they have taken Agatha. After murdering the church leader, Harlequin plays his flute while Agatha and some children follow him. Suddenly, one of the children tries to escape, triggering Harlequin's transformation into a monstrous horror. With an amazing speed, he grabs the boy and throws him into the air. Just then, Leon appears and catches him. While he falls, Leon confronts Pepe, the Harlequin, telling him that seeking revenge will only bring him suffering. Pepe in his horror form with his cape and stabs him, making him disappear with that. Leon tries to console the scared children, but they move away with fear, labeling him as a werewolf before fleeing. Upon his return, Leon meets his father, whom Emma told him about Leon's defeat at the hands of the Dark Knight. His father motivates him to break his limits and become stronger than he is now. With that, he asks Leon for money, explaining that his clothes have disappeared. Leon throws a bag of coins at his father's face before moving away in silence. Emma lights a cigarette, tells the events of the previous night that surrounded Leon's encounter with the Black Knight, named Bernardo Leon. And as Leon was barely alive, German was surprised to hear the name of Leon, but he comments that he is fine while Leon is alive, and also tells him that with this encounter Leon should accept his limitations, which can help him become stronger in the future. Hearing this, Emma reminds Herman that the McKay Knights are destined to protect, instead of just looking for battles. She warns that if Leon continues to seek power in order to defeat others, he may lose the right to be a Golden Knight. Elsewhere, while the patrol of the surveillance center is in a festing, Herman enters and confronts about why he did not warn them about Bernardo. She calmly explains that she had anticipated the appearance of Bernardo while chasing the Mendoza. German also asks if Bernardo has become a horror, so she confirms his descent into evil. In a flashback, German remembers a moment when he and Bernardo were riding a horse with Anna behind. He criticizes Anna's skills to ride horses, which leads her to fall impressed by his skillful recovery. He helps her to get on his horse while Anna's horse runs away while they continue. German and Bernardo commit themselves in a friendly fight. German jokes about the possibility of a serious confrontation between them in the future, but Bernardo discards the idea, giving the rule against the Macau horsemen who fight each other. German comments on Bernardo's seriousness, but Bernardo reveals an overwhelming desire to break the rules of the Makai Knights sometimes. In the next memory, German and Anna are chased by soldiers who harass Anna with witchcraft. The soldiers shoot German's horse, causing German and a pregnant Anna to fall to the ground. Despite German's objections, Bernardo insists that they should flee while he faces the soldiers. Knowing that German is wounded and unable to defend himself, German and Anna move away mounted on their horse while Bernardo faces the guards alone. However, unable to defend himself due to the code of the Knight Mackay, Bernardo suffers serious wounds and is captured by the soldiers. Back in the present, German thinks about how he must prepare to fight against Bernardo. With that, he hides again in the house where he was stolen, thinking that he would find his clothes, but suddenly he is attacked by Irene behind. Recognizing him, she runs to him, begging for help. German has doubts of being betrayed for the second time, but seeing his distressed state, he agrees to listen to her. Irene explains that one of the men with whom she was, Donato, immediately transformed into a monster and attacked everyone present. Just at that moment, Donato appears, transforming into a monster while attacking German. Reacting quickly, German enters the action, using the small knives he carries with him to stab Donato in his vital point, while Donato disappears in the air. After that, German advises Irene that if she continues on the path of deception, one day she will also become a monster. Seeing that German is actually a kind man, she ends up accepting to spend the night with him. The next day, German finally meets Leon and asks him for money for his clothes. Leon thinks about the contrast between having the almost mortal experience he faced and what his father has been doing. He throws the bag of money in his face and leaves. In another place, Raphael and Alfonso enter to fight the horrors. They get involved in combat despite being quickly knocked down by Raphael. Alfonso refuses to stay down, determined to improve, when Raphael proposes a powerful blow, causing Alfonso to crash against a wall. Raphael coughs blood when he realizes that he has no time to lose. Therefore, Raphael enters the surveillance center where he is received by the dog, recognizing him as the strong knight Gaia. Raphael immediately asks him to look for a brutal horror so that he can train his student, Alfonso. The dog offers him the Orvian Chimera, a terrifying creature known for consuming towns and entire villages wherever he goes. There are even rumors that his body is adorned with the remains of his victims, as if they were decorations for his armor. The dog warns Raphael about the dangers, saying that the Chimera is too powerful for a simple training and that Alfonso could not survive. However, Raphael says he has no time to lose. When Raphael leaves, Leon enters the surveillance center for the first time, greeted by the dog, who introduces himself as Garn. Garn asks for help to provide information about a formidable girl. Although at first he doubts, Garn tells him that she is perfect for him. When returning to the training field with Alfonso, Raphael is tormented by a flashback of someone lying in a pool of blood. During dinner, he mentions the subject of a girl who stalks the Orbian highway and orders Alfonso to defeat her as a final test of his training. Alfonso bursts in asking if she is strong enough, since he has not managed to scare Raphael with a single blow, but Raphael reminds him that he does not have time because Mendoza is carrying out his plan at this time, and soon he will have the power to fill the land of Valiant with horrors at any time. Determined to save his kingdom, Alfonso finally accepts to take the task. Elsewhere, while Leon fights against the horrors, he quickly perceives his lack of challenge, which leads him to look for the formidable Chimera horror that Garm had mentioned. The next morning, Alfonso is about to find the horror, and Raphael tells him that once he completes this test, he will be able to put on an armor like a Mackay knight. Later, while Leon sails through the streets of the town near Orving, he notices a merchant trying to scam Alfonso by accusing him of falsely breaking a costly pot. Leon intervenes, pointing out that the pot is nothing more than an ordinary item that is found anywhere. The merchant tries to demand compensation from him in his place, but he immediately backs away when he notices Leon's sword. Alfonso thanks Leon for helping him. While Leon tests the leaves, he hears people trying to convince Alfonso to stay in his inn. Leon's frustration grows from Alfonso's naivety, and telling him to grow a pair of balls and make himself a man at once, he directs him to an inn. They end up having dinner together and introduce themselves mutually. Alfonso lies and tells him that he has the same name as the prince he has sought. With that, Leon tells Alfonso that from the next day he will no longer accompany him, and Alfonso assures him that he will be fine. Late that night, Leon goes out trying to find the horror and unexpectedly meets Alfonso. Both Leon and Alfonso hide their true purpose while casually walking towards the horror. At the same time, Raphael abruptly wakes up, finding himself on the ground, and is consumed by a disturbing flashback. He relives the moment of his son's death between the flames, while his son apologizes for his incapacity to inherit Gale's armor. Meanwhile, Leon advances, urging him to return, but Alfonso tells him that he has a duty to fulfill. Suddenly, the Orvian Chimera appears. It has a massive body accompanied by two skeletons that push scales, with human bodies hanging below. When one of the skeletons prepares to attack, Leon points it out as his prey, telling Alfonso to stay out of his way. However, Alfonso insists that he needs to fulfill his duty to become a Makai Knight and thus protect his kingdom. Recognizing Alfonso's determination, Leon advises him to focus on the main body. While he takes care of the skeleton with the scabbard, Leon jumps forward, cutting the eye of the skeleton, making his hand release the scabbard, which flies through the air and destroys the second skeleton. Meanwhile, Alfonso dodges and paralyzes the creature's attacks, jumping to cut the structure similar to a door. The spells dissipate momentarily, but their victory is short-lived, as the ground begins to tremble. Suddenly, the doors open in pairs, unleashing a spell that swallows everything in its path with purple flames. Emerging from the smoke, they face a monstrous entity, a massive horror with an open mouth and pairs and rows of teeth. Realizing the imminent danger to towns and nearby cities, Leon, who is hiding under the cliff, tells Alfonso to back off. With that, he becomes the Golden Knight, which surprises Alfonso. The Golden Knight advances through the horrid fog, crushing him with his colossal form. Seeing this, Alfonso also enters into action, but is repelled by the powerful spells of the creature. In a moment of doubt, Alfonso wonders if he is really up to the task. However, Raphael appears suddenly on a nearby bridge, telling Alfonso not to give up until his last breath. Transforming into Gaia, Raphael faces the horror, but due to his illness he cannot fight correctly and is impaled by his spurs. In his final moments, Raphael passes his sword to Alfonso, letting Alfonso inherit his knight. Although he doubted and wondered if he was ready, Raphael motivates him by saying that he really believed in him and that he was ready before being killed by the horror. Alfonso grabs the sword and turns into a knight. He throws himself into the horror, stabbing the sword deeply in his vital point, while stabbing his skull, killing the horror. At that moment, Alfonso sees his teacher in the middle of a spot of light where Leon found his own grandfather. Raphael reveals to Alfonso and encourages him to overcome him before disappearing. When the horror disappears, he kneels down next to Leon, with tears running down his face.